All right. Thank you all for coming. My name is Bassam Haddad. I am speaking today about a few things, including the trip that me and my family had this summer. We went to Spain, Amman, Palestine, and then Beirut for research towards the end, but Spain for fun. And we could not get out of my daughter's 4.5-year-old daughter's mind that we're not in Spain, because wherever we went afterwards, because we're going to the region and she needs to know that she's, from the region, born there. So she's like, where are you? Where are we now? She's like, we're in Spain. And we're like, we've been in Ramallah and Amman. It was really interesting. And Noor, my wife, was like, mom fail, mom fail. So this presentation today is really intended to be, was intended to be a little bit more serious than I thought, but because of the previous presentations, I'm hoping that I could just shed some positive light. Unfortunately, it's about Israel-Palestine, and unfortunately, it's about research and work done on illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. So I don't know how to actually acrobatically turn this into a fun discussion, but there'll be pictures, and there'll be signs of life in a very, very gloomy and structurally problematic situation. We move from individual terrorism to structural terrorism. We move from individual forms of, or group forms of discrimination to collective discrimination and collective racism. So we basically, I decided to go through this by first talking about the very grim reality of illegal settlements, illegal Israeli settlements that are de facto Jewish-only illegal settlements in the West Bank, the territory that is supposed to become the part of the two-state solution is now basically dotted with settlements. We're talking about more than 600,000 settlers occupying more than 40% of the supposed land that will be part of the two-state solution. And we're looking at a kind of reality that is like truly miserable. I mean, it's basically like kind of erasing, trying to erase the will and dignity of people in time. And then you hear about this, and of course, not necessarily on mainstream networks, although you're beginning to hear it more and more in the past several years after the various invasions of Gaza and attacks on Gaza. But you hear about this, but when you go there, it's such a shock, and it happens every time, no matter how many times you go, and it keeps growing, of course, because if you just look at BBC News, BBC, we're not talking like anything really radical here. Just every few days, there's a new outpost, there's a new settlement, there's a new development that is decried even by British and US governments. Because the one thing that the US, despite its near carte blanche support for Israel, the one thing that has been constantly rejected is illegal settlements in the West Bank. And there are some figures. We'll start with some figures, and then we'll go to some pictures. These are, of course, very quick figures on Israeli settlement. These are basic figures regarding the UN Security Council Resolution 242, which was the framework for implementing a two-state solution in Palestine, Israel. Since, however, especially since '67, Israel has violated the resolution by entrenching its occupation of Palestinian territories through various illegal settlements, and that's just like one dimension, which is crucial. The numbers are kind of not what's at stake here. What's at stake, of course, is truly what is remarkable about this is that in the 21st century, you have a settler colonial project that is happening in front of our eyes, and it just keeps going, and it just expands, and it's okay. I mean, everything else that we point on the news that's not okay, including the cases we are witnessing every day on CNN and Fox and everywhere else that have to do with the Me Too movement, and that have to do with all sorts of problematics regarding government's efforts in during natural disasters. This particular problem is just like considered like a marginal issue, but of course it is not marginal for the overwhelming majority of the human population today. Some of the numbers, however, are 600 to 700,000 illegal settlers in the occupied territories in Palestine, 150 settlements. This is, by the way, a couple years old. 119 outposts in that particular area, and then 42% of the West Bank is controlled by settlements, with 86% of East Jerusalem for Israeli state and settler use. So not just Jerusalem, which is part of the two-state solution or the partition agreement in 48 by the UN, but half of East Jerusalem is 86% controlled by Israel, and it grows every single day as a result of various confiscations and so on. And these are confiscations of homes of regular families. And the majority of settlements, of course, have been built on land that is almost entirely private. If you, yes?
Can you clarify what's the difference between an outpost and a settlement?
Outpost would be basically a combination of civilian and military, if you will, checkpoint, and perhaps connected to some facilities, but it's not like a full-fledged settlement. It could actually be bigger there are different kinds of outposts, but it's basically a place when you are. That's why the talk is titled. From Ramallah to Beirut in 5 checkpoints, because wherever you go, you just feel that like you're in a big prison, basically, where there are some rights and there are the good, the good collaborators, and the bad, and the rest are bad, because there are collaborators and there are people that work with the system, and the biggest form of collaboration actually is the Oslo Agreement and the actual PA, which has for a while done the bad work of Israel in the occupied territories, and now you're beginning to find some sort of serious resistance. It's too late, but it's happening. Now, just a few basic, maps. This is what we are talking about basically. This is the West Bank. Israeli outposts and Israeli settlements dot the West Bank in a way that just prevents any normal carrying on of life. In another instance, you see the West Bank, and this is something that was said to be one of the, this is from the New Yorker, one of the maps that really shocked President Obama. And that's the President of the United States, who should know that we actually were funding this process, even though we're opposed to an aspect of it, or seriously opposed to an aspect of it, which is the settlements. So this is kind of like the Bantustans that end up actually, and this is published in the New Yorker. And so we're talking about material that, even if you want to take the most conservative and the most sympathetic approach to Israel, it looks basically like worse than apartheid in practice and visually. So this is what remains of the West Bank. And if you want to move from one place to the other, you're not just confronted with checkpoints, but if you don't have the right license plate, you can't go on certain roads. I went on the wrong road with Naya for a minute, and I swear, not for the first time. I've actually went to Iraq right after the invasion, and I've been to many dangerous places, including in Lebanon during also the Israeli invasion. I happened to be there with my camera, and I venture into these things because I do that. But because Naya was with me, I was really scared, because a few people came around the car, and I couldn't even film it because at that moment it wasn't about anything. And the hostility it's just a road, just like 3 or 5 feet away from the other road. I just took the wrong road, which goes into a settlement. I had a car that doesn't have the right license plate, the Israeli license plate. And that's how, and that's me, who has a US passport, who will probably get out of it. It's not a big deal. But this is the kind of fear that any normal person at any normal time faces going to school or going to church or going to mosque or going to anywhere. It's much worse than what I'm saying, but I'm trying not to be too doom and gloom, because I want to try to, talk about life, which is why I want to talk about this in a minute, talk about how life continues despite all of this. Social existence is actually a political revolution in Palestine. Just being there socially, just existing, doing the things that I'll show you quickly how, life continues, is itself a form of political revolution or resistance. This is the OCHA, United Nations Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. I think one of the reasons the Palestine problem is not being solved is because this unit has a very long name. So how are you going to communicate this and be effective? It's very difficult. But this is what it looks like. This is the entire West Bank, and only the white, pieces are in any way under control of, or some sort of control of non-Israelis. And even at that point, of course, at any point, Israelis can come in. I mean, as we've seen throughout. Oh my God, no pictures yet. Okay, so basically, this is the reality that we're referring to. I just want to take a couple of minutes and just go through some pictures so that we don't get too depressed here. This is Naya going into Palestine, and this is, I don't know.
Yes.
When?
In Spain.
We're in Spain. What's the other one? So this is 8mm shot. Everything was fine. Everything's beautiful. Walking in. This is me. I don't know what I'm saying here. This is going from Jordan to Palestine, and you go through 6 or 7 checkpoints just on the border, 1 or 2 from the Jordanian side and about 3 or 4 from the Israeli side. And this is just like going on just a regular vacation tour. This, I think, is when I was filming and I wasn't supposed to. I think, yeah,
Not because you're driving.
right there. No, I'm not driving. You can't drive. You're not allowed to drive. So this is.
Who's allowed to drive?
See that look? You missed it. See, this is. As at the border, usually we stay at the border for, because they Google my name and Noura's name, and we stay for 6 or 7 hours before we are let in. This time we actually just went in, the first I think in years, we just went in quickly. And this is another mommy fail.
Hi, Baba.
Hi, Daddy.
Tak ko nak nala, Baba.
Yes. In Spain.
Spain.
According to Naya, we are now in Spain.
Yeah. Mommy failed.
Where are we, Baba?
Are we in Spain?
Palestine.
This is a picture of when you get in, you just start seeing walls everywhere. We also had fun. This is a picture of a settlement from just next door. I mean, we're looking, and it's right there. They're everywhere, literally. We also had fun. This is entering into Jericho, which is basically where the PA is stationed. This is us at a friend's house with next door there was a girls' basketball team, which is, I mean, there is a society and there is life, and life goes on, and people affirm themselves by just being normal, which is itself an act of resistance. So this is, which was, Naya was like taken by just, and then of course she joined. This is a house of an artist that we went to. And he was like so gracious. He's an international artist, lives in Ramallah. This is one of his paintings that went everywhere in the world. This is basically the West Bank here, and it looks like a butterfly or hearts or whatever, or lungs, whatever you want to call it. But this is actually how art gets into, or politics gets into the art of various people. This is us. This is a drive through one of the settlements where you just, again, everywhere you drive around.
Does the country come with the soundtrack? It's just everywhere all the time.
The soundtrack is on the streets. No, this is in the car. This is what you see looking at various parts of the West Bank if you're driving, like literally everywhere. This is Ma'ali Adumim, which is one of the biggest settlements around. Goes on and on. And you could drive for like really literally several minutes. And this is not in East Jerusalem or West Jerusalem, it's in the West Bank. And of course the roads between settlements are for Israelis only. So if you want to go to school and you just happen to be if you happen to be obstructed by the intersection of roads, a 10-minute ride could take 45 to an hour and a half, because you have to go around every single day for dozens of years so far, especially around this area. So it's almost like, literally, it's almost like mind-boggling how something of the sort continues to exist. And of course, you'd be driving, and then all of a sudden, like seriously, I had to film this. You're driving, and then boom, there's a wall, and you have to turn. We went to various families' houses, talked to people in this particular town where they were in a place that is about to either be torn down, moved away for the purposes of security. I was driving and they were walking in front of me, and for a moment I thought, oh my God, if I lend my family over, I'll save so much money. No, I'm joking. I'm not. I didn't think of anything like this. I'm just trying to say something well. So basically, we were going through the various towns, through these parts of the town where probably won't be around soon for the purpose of what you're going to see next, which is basically more settlements or security around the settlements, because that has become another issue. I spoke with the director of Human Rights Watch in Ramallah, which I will not be able to share, about the new nation-state law, which essentially reaffirms the two-tiered system that treats different people, different groups based on a different set of rules, Palestinians and Israelis, and kind of entrenches that discrimination and separation that has existed for decades. And we actually did have fun. We went to the pools, we went to the markets, with all the great food, from knafe to all kinds of really awesome food. Naya just wanted Doritos. We win. And then here we actually ended up leaving, and that's it. Yeah, that's my presentation.